Hey everyone, this is Lindsay Stockman. Today I'm here to talk to you about the Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, and their regulations on medications. Let's get started. A couple of terms you might hear or see throughout my presentation. First one is monopoly. This is when someone, a specific company or a person has total control over something. So for example, that could be like the Johnson & Johnson company that owns, quite a few drug companies. Okay, so something that takes over the whole enterprise. A patent, form of intellectual property. This is when someone has developed something, they can file a patent, and that way it prevents others from making, using, selling, or importing an invention that has been made by the original person. Usually there's a time frame on that before somebody can make up a generic version, about 20 years depending on the patent. And then the Federal Trade Commission. So this is an independent agency of the United States government, came about in 1914, and really they're there to protect the consumers, so they're to protect us. So let's talk a little bit about the FDA. So the FDA was developed in 1906, been around for 112 years. They have gone through several different name changes, but currently Food and Drug Administration. Okay, they have almost 15,000 employees, and they have a budget of about $5.1 billion. Okay. Their current mission, which I got off their website, is assuring Americans that they have medicines that they use that do no harm and actually work, that they are, in other words, safe and effective. Okay, there are 3 overall questions that the FDA asks themselves when they're reviewing a drug, and that is whether the drug is safe and effective in its proposed use, and whether the benefits of the drug outweigh the risk, whether the drug's proposed labeling is appropriate and what it should contain, and whether the methods used to manufacture the drug and the controls used to maintain the drug's quality are adequate to preserve the drug's integrity, strength, quality, and purity. Okay, so if you were like me when I read that, I was kind of surprised that they asked these questions, mostly because when I see the commercials for some of these medications that are recently approved advertising these drugs, it'll cause diarrhea, it'll cause blindness, may cause depression, and you might die. But I guess the benefits outweigh the risks. So, here's hoping that they're doing their jobs and they're right. So what are the regulations? What are the policies and laws I'm talking about? So if you're specifically interested in the opioid legislation laws that they have for the FDA, that is the Code of Federal Regulations Title 21 that I looked into if you're interested in that. But basically, according to the Pharmaceutical Manufacturer Association, it takes 10 years to develop a new drug. Okay, so once it takes 10 to 12, then the patent, right? The patent's for 20, so then they have another 7, and we're going to talk right now about the other phases that the drug has to go through before it can get approved. Okay, so the federal law doesn't allow the FDA to approve a copy of a drug. When I say a copy, I'm talking about a generic version. So, let's say there's a Benadryl on the market and that's the name brand, but it might be 20 years before an off-brand comes on the market, okay? And that's all under the federal law. There are trials and clinical trials that the FDA has to go through with new drugs in order to get them approved. Phase 1 is 20 to 80 healthy volunteers to see about the safety and profile. It takes about a year. Phase 2, it's about 100 to 300 patient volunteers to assess the effectiveness. Okay, it takes 2 years. And then phase 3 involves 1,000 to 3,000 patients in clinics and hospitals where they're monitored to see any adverse reactions. Okay, and that takes 3 years. So right there, we're looking at 6 years. Another part of that 20-year process. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about patents. Okay, if you're a fan of Shark Tank like I am, you heard a little bit about patents. But a patent is basically, I've developed something, this is mine, I own it, I submit it to be approved for a patent, and that allows me a certain amount of time to only claim it as mine, meaning nobody can copy it, look into it, manufacture, do anything with it. I make 100% of the profits because it's mine and I have the patent. Okay. So basically, a generic drug, anytime a claim of patent infringement is alleged, a policy that has encouraged some patent claims, it just delays. Okay, so let's say I develop a drug, it's been 20 years, my patent is now over, now everybody can start creating it. Okay, there are patents that can get extensions for up to 5 years with an additional 6-month extension if the drug is having testing done on children. So I think that's a plus. I think, working with kids, you need to be extremely careful, working with any population, but when we're talking about, children, I think we all have a soft spot for them. So knowing that there is a extension for that is great. However, collectively, all these special monopolies prevent competition, which is why prices stay high. So let's talk a little bit about that. So what is the reality? We're going to talk about the reality and what this actually means for us as a consumer, but also as a patient. So basically, thinking about the high prices of medication, thinking about diabetes, which is one of the ones I mentioned in my earlier conversation when I was going to talk about this topic. And we have here Dr. Seen, who's a co-chair of the Right Care Alliance. So basically right now, for somebody who has diabetes, it can cost $400 to $500 a month to treat their diabetes, for their insulin. And right now, Dr. Seen is saying that if the drug companies slash their prices by 90%, they would still earn a 500% profit margin. Just a little history for you. The people that actually developed insulin didn't put a patent on it. These two men back in the day, because they wanted people to have it for free so they could monitor their health and take care of themselves. So, but here is just a couple examples, and this is on my resource page, of the top producers of pharmaceuticals in the world. Johnson & Johnson is developers of Tylenol, Roche created Valium, Pfizer is Advil, Robitussin, Viagra, Novartis is Ritalin, Bayer is aspirin, of course, Claritin, Aleve, Alka-Seltzer, Midol, GlaxoSmithKline is Wellbutrin and Zantac, and Merck & Company, NuvaRing, Singulair, and one of the top producers of type 2 diabetes insulin. So just to name a couple if you're interested in what they actually produce, but this is how much they're worth as well. So it makes you wonder, is it all about the money? So what about us, right? What about us as the consumer and the patient? Well, a couple of years ago, President Obama had produced a price control plan, so that way these companies couldn't inflate the prices of everything. If you've noticed in the news recently, there's been an influx in Narcan and how much that cost, or in other types of medications as well, not just insulin. So he proposed this. Fortunately, it didn't pass, but also thinking about how many lobbyists are on the payroll for these pharmaceutical companies. So when I say a lobbyist, they're a lobbyist for everything you can think of, for Greenpeace, for air quality, for marijuana, for alcohol. Well, of course, pharmaceutical company has one as well. So according to Barlow in this article I read, he said that for every member of Congress, there are 2 lobbyists, for the pharmaceutical company. So there are 535 members of Congress. Simple math, that's over 1,000 lobbyists just for pharmaceuticals. So currently, in reading the policy, there is nothing preventing any CEO of any pharmaceutical company increasing the price of any drug whenever they feel like it. So these are the questions that I want you to think about. 1, what do we think about not having a policy or any law in place that prevent any pharmaceutical company from raising the prices whenever they want? This happened with Narcan. It's been happening with insulin. Personally, I saw it with some cream I got for my skin, and I've seen it with my EpiPen. So what do we think? Is this fair to the population that needs medication to live? And it doesn't just be the U.S., but the world. Is this fair? Do you know someone, and it could be yourself, but you don't have to self-identify, who's currently on medication and overpaying? Does this person have insurance? My experience, I was on my husband's insurance while I was switching jobs, and it was cheaper to not file insurance, like drastically cheaper. So what is that? I don't even know. Do you think that the policies that the FDA have currently in place for creating new drugs, their patents, are acceptable? Should they be changed? If they were changed, what would it take to make them acceptable to you? Do we need them to be more rigorous? They have phases, they have trials. It's a 20-year process. What do you think? What do you think is too much to pay for medication that you need every day or else you'll die? Think about the people who are on cancer medication and diabetes and all those others. Is there a number that you think is too much? Should it be based on income? I don't have the right answer, guys. I'm just trying to get you to think about this with me. And 5, do you think that the government or the FDA or insurance companies should step in and regulate the amount someone is charged for medication. How could this be good and bad? Getting the government involved, it's always give and take. So what do you think? Here are my 2 articles. Here's some other articles I read in reference. So let me know what you think. Look forward to hearing from you. Bye.